going to listen to a project from Advanced Communication Manual. It is not from Pathways, but from the old syllabus. So this project is captioned as read out loud. So this is all about reading. And further it says it's not a speech, but it differs from giving a speech. And also it says it's about mastering, interpreting somebody else's literature by understanding the rhythm and style of that other person. So we are going to listen to a reading basically. He will be communicating to us somebody else's emotions and ideas. So our speaker has chosen a chapter from an author, British author, Roland Dahl, and he will be presenting his presentation for 12 to 15 minutes. So that's about the project. Let's hear the speaker. He is one of our past president and an electrical engineer, passed out from University of Morocco, Mahesh Amarsiri, Charlie and Chocolate Factory, Mahesh Amarsiri.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. So before starting my speech reading, let me give you a little bit introduction, so it will set the stage for the entire project. So I have chosen a section from this book. You see it on the screen. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. And Roald Dahl doesn't need any introduction. He's one of the most famous authors in children's literature. And Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, perhaps the most famous book out of his books. And it is estimated that over 20 million copies have been sold from this particular version. It was written in 1961. And also this book was translated into 55 different languages since then. And also this book has been adapted to cinema in 1971 and 2005. It is interesting to know the inspiration he got to write this particular book. And apparently, when he was in the school, you all are aware about the Cadbury chocolates, right? Yes. When the Cadbury wanted to launch a new particular chocolate, they used to come to their school and do the sampling. And he wanted to develop one of his own versions of chocolate so that he could surprise Cadbury's. I like this particular book the most because of the way the story has been constructed. So you can read from one chapter to another without any effort because it always arouses your curiosity. I enjoyed this book and recommend you to read it too. So let me start by introducing the characters of this particular book. Let's start. These two very old people are the father and the mother of Mr. Bucket. Their names are Grandpa Joe and Grandma Josephine. And these two very old people are father and mother of Mrs. Bucket. Their names are Grandpa George and Grandma Georgina. This is Mr. Bucket and this is Mrs. Bucket. Mr. and Mrs. Bucket have a small boy whose name is Charlie Bucket. And this is Charlie. The whole of his family, the 6 grown-ups and little Charlie Bucket, live together in a small wooden house on the edge of a great town. The house wasn't nearly large enough for so many people, and life was extremely uncomfortable for them all. There wasn't any question of them being able to buy a better house or even one more bed to sleep in. They were far too poor for that. Mr. Bucket was the only person in the family with a job. he worked in a toothpaste factory. Poor Mr. Bucket, however hard he worked, was never able to make enough to buy one half of the things that so large a family would afford. There wasn't even enough money to buy proper food for all of them. The only meal they could afford were bread and margarine for breakfast, boiled potatoes and cabbage for lunch, cabbage soup for supper. Sundays were a bit better. They all looked forward to Sunday because then, although they had exactly the same, everyone was allowed a second serving. The Buckets, of course, didn't starve, but every one of them went about from morning till night with a horrible empty feeling in their tummies. Charlie felt it worse at all. And although his father and mother often went without their own share of lunch or supper so that they could give it to him, it still wasn't nearly enough for a growing boy. He desperately wanted something more filling and satisfying than cabbage and cabbage soup. The one thing he longed for more than anything else was chocolate. Walking to school in the morning, Charlie could see great slabs of chocolate piled up high in shop windows. And he would stop and stare and press his nose against the glass. His mouth watering like mad. Many times a day, he would see other children taking bars of creamy chocolate out of their pockets and munching them greedily. And that, of course, was pure torture. I haven't yet told you about the one awful thing that tortured little Charlie. This thing, for him, was far, far worse than seeing slabs of chocolate in the shop windows or watching other children munching bars of creamy chocolates right in front of them. It was the most terrible, torturing thing you could imagine, and it was this. In the town itself, actually within the site of the house in which Charlie lived, there was an enormous chocolate factory. Just imagine that. And it wasn't simply an ordinary enormous chocolate factory either. It was the largest and most famous in the whole world. It was Wonka's factory, owned by a man called Mr. Willy Wonka, the greatest inventor and the maker of chocolates that there has ever been. And what a tremendous, marvelous place it was. It had huge iron gates leading into it, and high walls surrounding it, and smoke belching from its chimneys, and strange whistling sounds coming from deep inside it. And outside the walls, for half a mile around in every direction, the air was scented with heavy, rich smell of melting chocolate. Twice a day, on his way to and from school, little Charlie Bucket had to walk right past the gates of the factory. And every time he went by, he would begin to walk very, very slowly. And he would hold his nose high in the air and take long, deep sniffs of the gorgeous chocolatey smell all around him. Oh, how he loved that smell. How he wished he could go inside the factory and see what it was like. In the evenings, after he had finished his supper of watery cabbage and soup, Charlie always went into the room of his 4 grandparents to listen to their stories, and then afterwards to say good night. One evening, when Charlie went in to see his grandparents, he said to them, "Is it really true that Wonka's chocolate factory is the biggest in the world?" "True. Of course it's true. God heavens. Didn't you know that? It's about 50 times as big as any other." "And is Mr. Willy Wonka really the cleverest chocolate maker in the world?" "My dear boy," said Grandpa Joe, "Mr. Willy Wonka is the most amazing, the most fantastic, the most extraordinary chocolate maker the world has ever seen. I thought everybody knew that." "I knew he was famous, Grandpa Joe, and I knew he was very clever." "Clever?" cried the old man. "He is more than that. He's a magician with chocolate. He can make anything he wants. Isn't that the fact, my dears?" The other three old people nodded their heads slowly up and down and said, "Absolutely true. Just as true as can be." And Grandpa Joe said, "You mean to say that I have never told you about Mr. Willy Wonka and his factory?" "Never," answered little Charlie. "God heavens above, I don't know what's the matter with me." "Will you tell me now, Grandpa Joe, please?" "I certainly will. Sit down beside me on the bed, my dear, and listen carefully. Tell Charlie about that crazy Indian prince," said Grandma Josephine. "He'd like to hear that." "You mean Prince Pondicherry?" said Grandpa Joe, and he began chuckling with laughter. "Completely dotty," said Grandpa George, "but very rich," said Grandma Georgina. "What did he do?" asked Charlie eagerly. "Listen, and I will tell you." Now, the Grandpa Joe is telling the story to this little boy. Prince Pondicherry wrote a letter to Mr. Willy Wonka and asked him to come all the way out of India and build him a colossal palace entirely out of chocolate. Did Mr. Wonka do it, Grandpa? He did indeed. And what a palace it was. It had 100 rooms, and everything was made of either dark or light chocolate. The bricks were chocolate, the cement holding them together was chocolate, and the windows were chocolates, and all the walls and the ceilings were made of chocolate. So were the carpets and the pictures and the furniture and the beds. And when you turned on the taps in the bathroom, hot chocolate came pouring out. When it was all finished, Mr. Wonka said to Prince Pondicherry, "I warn you, it won't last very long. So you better start eating it right away." "Nonsense," shouted the prince. "I'm not going to eat my palace. I'm not even going to nibble the staircase or lick the walls. I'm going to live in it." But Mr. Wonka was right, of course, because soon after this, there came a very hot day with a boiling sun, and the whole palace began to melt, and then it sank slowly to the ground, and the crazy prince, who was dozing in the living room at that time, woke up to find himself swimming around in the huge brown sticky lake of chocolate. Little Charlie sat very still on the edge of the bed, staring at his grandfather. Charlie's face was bright, and his eyes were stretched so wide so you could see the whites all around. "Is this really true?" he asked. "Oh, are you pulling my leg?" "It's true," cried all four people at once. "Of course it's true. Ask anyone you like. And I'll tell you something else that's true," said Grandpa Joe. And now he leaned closer to Charlie and lowered his voice to a soft, secret whisper. "Nobody ever comes out." "Out of where?" asked Charlie. "And nobody ever goes in." "In where?" cried Charlie. "Wonka's factory, of course." Grandpa, what do you mean? I mean workers, Charlie. Workers. All factories have workers streaming in and out of the gates in the morning and the evenings, except home cars. Have you ever seen a single person going into that palace or coming out? Little Charlie looked slowly around at each of the 4 old faces, one after the other, and they all looked back at him. They were friendly, smiling faces, but they were also quite serious. There was no sign of joking or leg pulling on any of them. Well, have you seen? Asked Grandpa Joe. I really don't know, Grandpa. Charlie stammered. Whenever I walk past the factory, the gate seems to be closed. Exactly, said Grandpa Joe. But there must be people working there, right? Not people, Charlie. Not ordinary people anyway. Then who? Right, Charlie. Aha, that's it, you see. That's another of Mr. Willy Wonka's cleverness. I'll tell you the rest of it tomorrow evening. Over to you.
So we have listened to a very interesting story. I think it may increase your curiosity in